And this is fantastic. This is, and if I may be as bold to say, Steve and Phil, I hope you don't mind me saying this, I'd keep this and get rid of that.
Actually, we can heat that place now a bit better.
All sorts of reasons. And the main principle, as Philip already said, that the Bible and tents are linked. Moses, you know, when they traipsed through, they took the Holy of Holies with them, they set up their tent every day and worship in the tent, and then set it down, and they moved on, and they did that. St. Paul was a tent maker. He didn't make this one because there's that many holes in it. I've got to be honest with you. This needs a bit of work. And I have warned a few people that if it does start to rain, I will speed up. There's the one there, you see, right above me. If I feel a drop of water coming through there, I'm out of here, guys. Okay? Let's just nail that. Let's get that sorted. That's fantastic. Yeah, my name's Jeff Reynolds. I'm the Superintendent Methodist Ministry of the Stafford Methodist Circuit. I'm also chaplain to Her Majesty's Prison Stafford, so I'm used to speaking to groups like this. It doesn't faze me. In fact, I recognise one or two. But we'll keep it like that, shall we? I'm also chaplain to Stafford Rangers Football Club, and out of those two jobs, the latter is considerably harder. It's the only place where when they lose 1-0, it's my fault. Because I didn't pray hard enough. Not that they didn't defend a corner, that I didn't pray hard enough. I'm also, my ecumenical credentials are that I'm the captain of the Lichfield Diocesan cricket team as well, which is quite a thing because there's one Methodist and the rest are Anglicans. And so on a Monday afternoon when the season starts through the summer, how do I put this? I get to order 10 Anglicans around. And it's great. And I set the field and I move them about, not for cricketing purposes, but because I can. And in our team we have two very good cricketers, the Bishop of Wolverhampton and the Bishop of Shrewsbury. Bishop of Wolverhampton, Clive Gregory, Bishop of Shrewsbury, Mark Rylance. They're both, I'm their captain. And so I move them about more than anybody else. Obviously they're bishops, so you can only move them diagonally, but that's not a problem. We tend to move them. In fact, there was a game last year when Clive, the Bishop of Wolverhampton, said, "Why move me?" I said, "Because I can. It's nothing to do with cricket. On this field, you call me sir." So if you ever see them, just send them my love. So it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. And my theme is the King's problem. And I'm so really sorry to hear that the King has a problem. And when I saw the theme, I wondered what that problem might be. Whether it's a health problem, like me, I've got a bit of a dodgy knee. Whether it's a work problem. Whether it's a housing problem, whether it's a car problem. Well, it's none of those, because the King's problem, then the thing I'm talking about, the King's problem is you and me. We are the King's problem, okay? And there's one or two of you that are more of a problem than others, and they're probably from Western Chapel, but that's fine. They're over there, that's absolutely fine. But the King has a problem, and his problem is you and me. So why are we a problem? Why are we a problem to the King? Why are we a problem to God? Well, the God who loves us so much, who offers his grace and mercy, we are a problem to him. And in Christian doctrine, and for 2,000 years in Christian doctrine, and in big books with no pictures in, and you can't even colour them in vast theological libraries, the fall of grace of human beings is actually stark. It really is. The transition of human beings like you and me from a state of innocent obedience to God to a state of guilty disobedience to God, it really is stark. And it's actually, when you read it and you try and take it apart, it's actually quite painful. It goes right back. You want to go right back to Genesis chapter 3. And the story we know well, well, we think we know well, actually. When you test people on it, they don't know it as well as they think. The story of Adam and Eve. But it's not just there, and we point to that, followed up in the New Testament by Paul in the book to the church at Rome, Romans chapter 5, in his first letter to the church at Corinth, chapter 15. This is a problem. We're a problem to God because of who we are. We are a problem. Steve talked about the word sin. It's the same thing. Sin as we are a problem to God. And it's almost as if we can't help ourselves. And that's scary, isn't it? It's almost as if it's innate within us to stuff up It's innate within us to get things wrong. It's innate within us to have a degree of selfishness, of self-interest, of downright disobedience. Sorry if I'm hitting a few home truths here, but I could be talking about myself if I'm honest. Because if you're sitting there and thinking, well actually Jeff, that's not quite me, I wonder if it's because you don't really realise what is inside you. There's a wonderful, wonderful tale. It's an old tale, it's an old fable, and it's about a river, not a wide river, but a river. And on one side of the river, on the bank, there's a duck and a scorpion. The duck can swim, the scorpion can't. And the scorpion wants to get from this side of the river to this side of the river. And he has no means of doing it, because if the scorpion went into the water, the scorpion would drown, and that would be that. And so the scorpion says to the duck, will you give me a lift? Can I ride on your back to the other side? And the duck says, well, no, because you're not very nice, and you will sting me, and it will kill me, and that will be the end of me. And the scorpion says, well, I wouldn't do that, because if I stung you, then I'd be killing myself, wouldn't I? I would go down as well, because I can't swim. So actually, I wouldn't do that. I just want to lift to the other side. And the duck thinks, okay, we'll do it. So the scorpion hops on, they set off across, halfway across, the scorpion stings the duck. And as they both fall into their death into the water, the duck says, what did you do that for? And the scorpion says, I can't help it. That's me. It's innate within me to get things wrong. It's innate within me to do things wrong. It's innate within me to be the thing that I am. And sometimes, that's us. We're the problem, because it's innate within us to be disobedient and selfish and stuff up, and the thing we call sin, the thing that blocks us from God. And we've been given something by God as well. We've been given self-will. We've been given free determination to do whatever we choose to do. We're not automatons. We're not automatically programmed by God to do certain things. We're given an option. Dangerous thing to do, actually. Dangerous thing to do by God. But God did it because God is love. And so we have the ability to do whatever we choose. And so the best description I have tonight of the king's problem, the best description I have, is standing right in front of you. Roger. No, him. No, sorry. No, the best description. I made that bit up. The best description I have of the king's problem is standing in front of me. I am the best description of the king's problem. You see, the thing is, you're a problem to the king if you know nothing of faith and you're not involved in the church community. And you're also a problem for the king if you are. So those of you are thinking, well, I don't have a great faith and I'm outside of faith, Jeff. I feel a bit, awkward about that. Well, actually, if you go to church every week, you ought to feel awkward as well. Okay? So you're all together in it, and we're all in it together. Who said that? Somebody said it. It was a load of rubbish anyway. We're all in it together in that sense, in the fact that, whether involved in faith or not, we are the king's problem. And I was a problem, and I've been a problem for years to the king, if I'm honest. I only started going to church till I was 22 years old. And I had a lot of free will when I was about 17, 18. I'd got a job, I'd got money, and I discovered girls and cars. In that order, can't quite remember. I spent a lot of time chasing girls. It's just that all the girls in Nottingham just seem to be Olympic runners. Just never got hold of any of them. They're just all... So I got a car and they seemed to drive faster than me as well, which was a bit of a pain. And, so I really went for it. And at the age of 17, I used to go to football matches a lot, and I got involved in a fight with a football match in West Brom, actually. Well, I didn't get involved in a fight in West Brom. Oh, it's too complicated. I was in a police cell in Derby, alright? So I'll just let you work out the direction. I went to a football match in West Brom, got into a fight in Derby, on my way back home to Nottingham, ended in a police cell for the night. And I sat there with a black eye, nursing my pride and also thinking, this is not good, is it, really? And the magistrate fined me £5. So that's how long ago it was. It was 2 weeks ago, but that's fine. I got fined £5. And I had a lot of rebellion in me. A lot of rebellion that had to come out. And somewhere that was one of the ways it came out. And you're looking back, I treated people quite badly, actually. And looking back, I was quite inherently selfish about the person I was. And I knew I had to bring about some changes in the person I was. Because I didn't know it then, but I was a major problem to the king then. I really was. And so I started to get involved in the life of the church, and that was interesting at the age of 22. If you've never been to church, ever, going for the first time is torture. It is torture of the highest order, because you don't know the songs, and the Bible reading. I was given a Bible at the church I went to, and the Bible reading was from the book of Obadiah. Most of you don't know where it is. No clue. Somewhere in the middle. And by the time, and they've got an index, and so I found it in the index. By the time I turned to it, what had happened? No, it hadn't finished. They were singing the next hymn. By the time they hadn't finished, they went to the third verse of the next hymn before I found it. And so it went on, and this bloke stood at the front, he had his head completely turned round and all that, and he spoke for 20 minutes, it was dreadful. And then they had the sheer brass neck to ask for money for it. That was my first experience at church. But I started to go because of the people, and I started to really connect, the way Anthony would say, connect with an understanding of faith. I still had a lot to learn, you know. It got to Christmas, and I didn't know that Jesus was connected with Christmas. I didn't know, because nobody taught me. You know, I lived in a council house estate of 45,000 people. We had to paint the concrete green to play football on it. Because my dad convinced me that if he painted it green, it was a softer landing. Yeah, thank you, very psychological. I've still got the bruises here. And so that's my background. And so as I tried to get to grips with this faith thing, and I started to go to church every week, and I really tried, I really did, honestly. I really tried to understand. It took me ages to understand something of God, and to understand, and I began to understand that I'd been a problem to him. And I began to understand that I was still a problem to him at that time. It was really, really interesting. And I used to go, and because it was a Methodist church, and that's the only reason I'm a Methodist, folks, because the first church I ever went to was a Methodist church. I have no brief for the Methodist church. I'm its biggest critic. I'd close it down tomorrow if I could, but, you know, there we are, I can't. And I have a, you know, my view of it was so interesting. And I kept watching, because it was a Methodist church, they had a minister about every month, and then every week they had some kind of lay preacher who stood up and spoke. And some were good, some were rubbish, and they had a lectern, and I realised what the lectern was for. I thought it was to put the Bible on and the notes on. It's for people to hold on to. Preachers were like this. And God said, oh, they're terrible. They were really nervous, you know. So I'd been going to church a few years, and I was fed up of seeing these people sweat. Because you could smell them from the back as well. And they were sweating because they were so nervous. So after the end of the service, I said to one of the stewards, I said, can I have a go? And he thought about washing up. He was going to put me on the washing up rota. I says, no, not washing up, preaching. He says, what do you mean, can I have a go? I says, well, in my arrogance, I says, well, let's be honest. I can't be any worse than like we've just had. Come on, give me a go. And it was that type of church where they said, yeah, all right, we'll give you a go. And they gave me the service that nobody comes to. All right, you're laughing. December the 27th at 6:30. It was a church at 6:30. Well, they didn't reckon on the fact that I drummed up all my mates to come. So all my mates turned out. And as I came out of the vestry, they went, yeah, come on! Woo-hoo! They've been to the pub since 12. Never. And I proceeded then to preach the worst sermon. I've still got the notes. I'll wheel it out and preach it one day. The worst sermon on the 3 wise men. I somehow worked out there were 4. I don't know why. Hey, I don't know why. And actually, do you know what? I walked out the pulpit and I said, I'm never going to do that again. And that was a piece of arrogance, thinking that I was any good at doing this. And that lasted about 15 seconds when the steward came up. He said, hey, actually, you're quite good. He said, I think we need to train you. I said, why? He says, I think we need to train to be a lay preacher. So I did. So I thought, oh, blow this. So I trained to be a lay preacher. And I qualified after 3 years as a Methodist lay preacher. And all the time I was doing that, I was becoming a bigger problem to the king. I learned more about sin. I learned a bigger understanding of the cross. I won't touch that because I know the Bishop of Stafford's doing that on Thursday, isn't it? And, you know, I've upset 2 bishops already this week. I don't want to upset them. And because I've got no, you know, I wish the Bishop of Stafford played cricket because I'd have all 3 of them I could push in. And then I'd get Jonathan as well, Bishop of Lichfield, and I'd have control of the whole of the diocese, I'm hoping. And so, and while I was soon to be a lay preacher, do you know what? I went to bed one night, I sat by my bed, I was reading in the book. And I suddenly had this thought that just came, it's like a voice, that came into my mind. And it's because I'd just been to the training night for preachers, I was doing my training. And I had this voice that said, actually, I don't want you to just train. I want you to have your head completely turned around. I want you to start putting on your shirts on back to front. I want you to wear a dog collar. I want you to be a minister. And I didn't like that, you see, because I didn't want to be one. And as I drove over here tonight, I still didn't want to be one. Because I didn't want to be one, you see. And I didn't like that, and I thought that was a silly voice. And so I took no notice of it. Qualified as a local preacher, did my preaching. And after about 3 years, this was 3 years since I had this voice, about 3 years, I was doing a service. But something called Local Preachers Sunday. And Local Preachers Sunday in the Methodist Church is where a load of preachers from one circuit clear off in a big car to another circuit and they swap over. So in other words, you go to a church that you've never been to before. And I got landed going to Woodthorpe Methodist Church in Nottingham. Tiny chapel, about 20, 25 people. And I did my service and just stood up and messed around like I do. And I stood at the door. And you know, if you're a minister or a vicar, you stand at the door and people come up and say, thank you very much, nice hymns. In other words, what you said was rubbish, but you know, at least we had a good sing type thing. Or some people come up and say, oh, it's a very good word today. In other words, can you pick some hymns we can sing next time? That's how really when people are, and nobody's a challenge. Nobody's ever honest with you at the church door, are they? I'd love someone to come and say, do you know what, Jeff? Well, that was rubbish. That was rubbish. Because sometimes I am, so I wish people would acknowledge it. And so people aren't very honest. And so I've stood there going, nice hymns, thanks, thank you so much. And then suddenly, this lady came up, who must have been 70s or 80s, an elderly lady. And she came up and she looked absolutely furious. I mean, she did. She looked, I can still see her, livid she was. I says, hello. She says, I don't want any of the hello. Sorry. She wouldn't shake my hand. And she prodded me in the chest. Like this. She says, have you ever thought about becoming a minister? And I lied. I said, no. She said, well, you ought to think about it. I've never seen her since. And she died in a freak yachting accident that later. No, she didn't. I've never seen her since. And I'll tell you what, I went home and that really freaked me. I mean, I don't mind being accosted by 70-year-old women who are angry. That's part of the job. But it's what she said. Have you ever thought about becoming a minister? And I had, and I said no. I lied to her through my teeth. Didn't make me feel good. I felt bad. And I felt awkward. And I felt uncomfortable. And then I went to bed, woke up, forgot about it, went to work, and that was it. About 2 weeks later, I was preaching at one of the churches in my area that I knew very well. And a chap there's a door. Again, a chap I knew very well, he came up to me, he says, oh, Jeff, he says, oh, really enjoyed that. He says, I was sitting there thinking today, he says, you're probably going to think this is daft. He says, I was sitting there thinking today, you'd make a great minister. Have you ever thought about it? No. That's 2 people in 2 weeks. And then 3 weeks later it happened again. That's 3 people. in 5 weeks. And by this time, I was in a complete state. Because I'd lied to them all. I'd said, no, I'd never thought about it, but I had thought about it. And it hadn't actually gone away. And this is 3.5 years on. I was being a problem, you see. Problem to the king. Big problem. So I rang my own minister and I said, Ken, fantastic minister. One of my heroes. Great guy. Great guy. Same age as me, and remarkably still is. Just trying to keep you with me, you're alright. I was going to say I'm here all week, but I'm not here all week, so okay. And so I rang him, I said, Ken, I need to come and see you. Now, the only thing I went to see Ken about was cricket. That's the only thing I came to see him about. He says, what? He says, are we short of a player? I said, no, I need to come and see you. So I went to see him, and I went into his house, and we sat in his study. He says, I'll just go and put the kettle on. He said, I'm really interested in what you come to see me about. He says, I think I know. I said, Ken, you've got no idea. He said, let me have a guess. I said, okay, Ken, you've got one guess. And he stood up, and he walked to the door to put the kettle on, and he turned around and he said, are you thinking about becoming a minister? I said, can I lie to you, Ken? Or do you want me to tell the truth? He said, let's think about it. Let's go for the truth on this occasion. I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I've been thinking about it for 6 months. I've been waiting for the opportunity to talk to you about it. And so I sat down and I said, look, I don't know what you do. I've got no idea. And I'm scared and I don't want to do it. He said, that's fantastic. You're the perfect person then. I said, what do you do? He said, well, and he gave me his diary. Don't forget, he gave me his diary. He said, choose a month. So I said, October. He said, okay, look through October. And I looked through it, I'm thinking, what's all this? You're out every night, what's going on here? And then there was one Friday, it went OWW. I thought, one World Week, got it. And like 2 weeks later, OWW, 2 weeks later. And we got to Christmas and we'd had about 6 One World Weeks. He says, why do you have One World Week every fortnight? He says, that's not One World Week, that's out with wife. He says, because if I don't put it in the diary, it ain't going to happen. And so I gave in. I gave in at that point. And it was by the time I'd been accepted by the Methodist Church to go to theological college, it was 5 years from first hearing that that's probably what God wanted me to do. And here I stand now. That's 20 years ago. I went to theological college in 1992. I was only, 14? Still lying through his teeth. And that was then, and here I am now, doing this and doing all the stuff I do, etc., etc. And the thing is, folks, and this is what I'm coming around to saying, I'm still a problem. I'm still a problem to the king. Because there's never a point for any of us, because of our innate ability to disobey and to be selfish, there's never a point where we don't become the king's problem. There's never a point. And that's about how we ultimately rely on God. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that as the weeks go on, as the days go on. I'm not going to tread on someone else's ground in terms of the cross and all the other bits and bobs that you're going to be hearing this week. But I'm still a problem. And so are you. And it's acknowledging the fact that we're a problem and that our need of God is as important whether we've never been to church in our life or whether we've been going for 40, 50, 60 years. We're still the king's problem. And I thank God that I still am, really, because while ever I'm his problem, it means that I've still got a chance. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.